You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, what's good, everybody? It is Tuesday, September 24th as we inch closer to the season opener in Montreal on October 9th. Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill, another edition of Leafs Morning Take. What's going on, Rosie?
What's up, Nikolai? It is good to get the week going here. We had some action since I last saw you, which was kind of exciting, man. Just seeing that the Leafs are playing hockey tells me what time of year it is, even though it's exhibition, so don't get too excited.
Yep, I'm pretty pumped, though, I won't lie. So over the weekend, I was down in Tennessee, got that vibe, that feel, that southern twang. Shenner was in the air. But it was one more of those things where it's like we're getting closer and closer to puck drop. You get sort of the feel of like a different market where they're really, really excited for their team. And granted, we're really excited about the Maple Leafs, but all in all, pretty interesting weekend in Tennessee. I got to check out Morgan Wallen in Knoxville on Friday night. Checked out Nashville on Saturday and Sunday night. And I did a bit of pre-scouting. We had mentioned about a month back, we were planning a nation vacation, nothing official, but it sounds like it's going to be in Nashville. So I did some pre-scouting for us too.
Yeah, you took a little impromptu road trip vacation, put out some miles on a van or what? You and some buddies, man? To be young again, my goodness. But
I don't know what it is. One of my friends like enjoys driving. And so for the majority of the trip, I think I drove like 3.5 hours total. And that was like the drive from Knoxville to Nashville because my buddy was just way too hungover. Other than that, my one friend drove like the entire way. We were like sort of joking in the car ride. We did all 11 hours back from Nashville yesterday, and we sort of joked that he threw like a complete game like that. That's some stamina to drive like 11 hours in one day. But for anybody looking to do that roadie from like the Toronto area to Nashville, you got to split that puppy up, Rosie. I'm gassed today, bud.
that is aggressive. Good old American road trip there, old Sonny. I like it. But yeah, pre-scout that spot down south, Nashville. I love it. I was there last year, I think. Maybe it's a little more than that. But love that town. A lot of people are loving that town. It's busy. It's crazy. It's like the new Vegas for a lot of people. But yeah, looking forward to doing something with this pod down there with Nation Vacation, man. It's gonna be awesome.
And you got to see Morgan Wallen in person. Like this concert, I was randomly we just randomly decided to go last week. Went up to Knoxville. This is a stadium like the college football team plays at. I think it's Tennessee. Told me that I don't know much about football and American sports, but this stadium just was so big. And you just look at Morgan Wallen and his trajectory the last couple of years. And it was cool too, because Wallen's from Tennessee. So like every song he played, like the entire place was just going nuts. It's really cool. Like I wasn't a big country fan like 15 years ago, but honestly, what changed me was going to Nashville for the first time years back. You might have even been on the team back then. Remember I told you the story? It was that game where I think Craig Smith had like an empty net and he somehow put it into the netting on a breakaway. It was really, really, I don't know if you were on the team that year. Were you?
He went to roof an empty netter and then he put it into like the third deck, and then everyone was like celebrating with him, and he went and sat on the bench, and then the guys were like, that didn't go in. It was the weirdest thing that's ever happened in hockey, I think. I do remember that.
Were you on that team?
I can't remember if I was on the bench or if I was watching from afar, if that was from TV or press box. I honestly can't remember. I just remember that play. What year was it?
I'll always remember that night for a variety of reasons, man. We got gooned up. It was like 60 of us went on a Leafs roadie. We did it for like 10 years. We don't do it anymore. But I also remember it because I met Carrie Underwood in the concourse, which was like such a big moment in my life. She was so down there. It's so cool. And it was a really unique experience. But if you want to go watch a hockey game, again, we're going to do a nation vacation. It seems very likely at this point. And what that is, essentially, you get to go watch a game with us. We're going to do some live podcasting on location in Nashville. Get to watch a game at Bridgestone Arena. I don't know if it's still called that, but to watch a game in Nashville, you've obviously played there. It's a unique experience, isn't it?
It is, man. There's just so many things that organization in town, the boxes they check. They really like the team there, and that's in the South where it wasn't something a lot of people grew up with. I mean, they play hockey and it's gotten bigger, of course, but man, the Preds support is unbelievable for the market that they're in and where they're situated geographically. That isn't traditionally a big hockey market, and you can't say that anymore. And they got a nice building. It's loud as hell, energetic. The stars are out and everything. People that vacation from in Canada want to go catch a hockey game while they're down there. They're there. They know what's going on. It's pretty fun, man. It's a wicked, wicked atmosphere. And we have lost a few players to that organization in the past. And sometimes you can't blame them, even though you're disappointed.
Shows you how gassed I am. I took a picture and it said Bridgestone Arena, and I somehow mentioned, is it still called Bridgestone Arena? So yeah, bear with me today.
We know.
I will say, just to wrap on the Nashville front, I could see why Shenner signed there, man. A really, really cool place, great food, great vibes. So we wish Shenner a great year, and down the road, no doubt this season we'll have him back on the podcast. Man, I am jacked. I am jacked about this Amazon Prime series for so many reasons. See the clip that came out yesterday? That was fun.
I saw it. What did you see out
Hey,
there?
it was confirmation, Rosie. It was confirmation. We had a pretty extensive convo on this podcast about what William Nylander really said in that meltdown, the soap opera, in that series, and he said it. I mean, I know that the cut's weird because they cut to Matthews' face in the promo, but rest assured, we know the direction that was headed.
But I'll tell you what, I'm going to take that clip with a grain of salt. I'm not going to put too terribly much stock into it, because I'm telling you, the way Nylander said, "Stop crying, bro," to Marner, you can paint that, and the Marner haters and people, and I've been critical of Marner, you can say there's proof, there's confirmation that he's this, he's that, there's all this stuff, but you got to understand how much time those guys spend together. They talk to each other after every single shift on the bench. They talk to each other in the locker room, in the gym. They go out to dinner together. They're on the plane together. They're in the hotel. These guys are together all the time. They're very close. For a guy to say to someone that he's that close with, "Come on, let's just go. Stop crying, bro." Like, let's just and for it to get caught on a mic in Toronto, you're going to blow that up and say, "I told you so, look at this," and make it a huge deal. But in reality, with how much those guys say to each other throughout a season that fans couldn't even really comprehend, I'm not going to put that much stock into it. I'm not going to hold Mitch's feet to the fire about it. It is not a huge deal. It's a snippet of info that people can run wild with and turn it into something, but I'm not going to get on that camp.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's the direction I wanted to head with this conversation. Obviously, you've been in an NHL locker room, you've been in the Leafs room. Everything is under a microscope, but that's sort of where I wanted to pull you, is like, would this even be a conversation? I know the players have been waiting for this for a while. They've probably seen the edits well before we have, but there won't be friction from this, right? Like, I think you're so right. Like, I think this happens on a daily basis, just not picked up by cameras.
Yeah, I think, I know those guys stay away from the media, stay away from, what's happening here and those little things that we get excited about in the media and as fans. And they stay away from that for good reason. They've been vocal about that, and rightfully so. Why would you follow all that stuff when it's just more distraction? But if that comes out and they're watching or whatever, it would just be a little smile from Willie to Marner. It's not a big deal to them. This isn't like the turmoil that people would love to turn it into to make it interesting and make drama amongst their favorite team and all that crap. It's just not a big deal. It really isn't. Those cameras are following them around nonstop, to the point where they're trying to get them to forget that the cameras and mics are there. And you say one thing, like in the heat of a passionate playoff game, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. People want to confirm their suspicions about Mitch Marner, this or that. I just don't give that too much credit, because it's one little snippet, and I don't think that's a big deal. It wasn't like this all-time meltdown. It wasn't like, this huge pressure cooker came to fruition amongst two players. It was one thing that they say to each other probably all the time, that it was blown out of proportion, if you ask me.
Debuts October 4th, and Nylander's the star of the show in the debut episode. But again, star players are going to fight. It was a difficult series. I thought it was unique to see that there was even a sushi session with Nylander and his buddy Pasternak. So it's always fun when you get two players in two different markets, especially rivals, go toe-to-toe who are friends. I would have loved to see Connor McDavid drop an F-bomb. You know how I feel about swearing and all that language. That was the only thing missing about that clip, but that was a really cool behind-the-scenes clip. If you had a chance to check out some of the trailers and the previews, McDavid in the Cup final, telling his team to dig in, man. Like, it's some of those moments you really don't see as a fan or media and get that perspective when people try to go out of their way to question like somebody's leadership, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's wild. I mean, I just think it's cool to have that kind of access. Sometimes, like, the player side of me is like, God, they got the cameras everywhere. Like, no one can. I don't think it's authentic, but I put on Olympus, that 24/7 that they came out with, where they did it a few different years, and they followed the
Yeah.
Penguins during one of their runs, and that access and like unscripted coverage and footage that they got, and having those cameras around basically all year, to the point where I think the players did kind of forget about them and then acted, candid and can themselves. I thought that access was so unbelievably well done, well put together, well edited, and they caught so much good footage that I was just in shock. I remember being a kid watching NHL Cool Shots with Dan Moriarty,
Mhm.
and they just show like through a door you could kind of see the locker room, like, holy crap, look at that, and they're doing their, look what they're wearing, and just every little thing. You didn't get that access back then. And then that 24/7 came out. I was so impressed. So we'll see how Amazon does it. I hope they don't try to overproduce it and try to make it all hypey. I hope they just follow the day in life of the journey of an NHL team. But nonetheless, they're hyping it up. The way they're done these days, these documentaries and stuff that are coming out, they're unbelievably well done. So I'm pretty excited about it, and see what Willie has to say. Obviously, they picked him for a reason.
Man, I won't lie. The more I just learn about Willie Nylander, the more I watch him play hockey, the more I love him. Like, if you were to ask me when all these guys started, who would have been my favorite or who would have been my top guy, it wouldn't have been Nylander. Just the way he started his career, the way he looked, but the way he's evolved and how complete of a player he is, and the leadership qualities, it just shows you it doesn't matter who's wearing a letter. I know some people are like, "Wow, Riley wasn't wearing an A the other day." There's so many leaders in that room, and you can speak to that, obviously.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the guys that get the job done, the guys that present themselves in a certain way every single day, the guys with different attitudes, the guys with positive energy, the guys that keep and carry their confidence all the time, that's contagious. And at the end of the day, when you go through an 82 game season, you go through camp and preseason and the regular season grind, the ups and downs, the injuries, the traveling, the schedule, the wins and losses, go through a playoff. You're with these guys all the time. And at the end of the day, that piece of material on your jersey is just, it's meaningless to them. Like, sometimes I couldn't tell you who's the A's again on our team. Like, you just, in your own mind, through the day to days, who the guys are that you look to, that subconsciously, give off good vibes and help teams along, and that people follow even if they don't know. I think Willie's one of those guys. And like you mentioned, you probably didn't peg him maybe to be that guy when he was super young, and he's matured and he's turned into a pretty special player. And I think he's got the personality to play in Toronto. He doesn't seem to let things bother him. He's kind of got that little smirk on his face all the time. And I can't imagine you'd talk to many teammates of his that didn't have a lot of good things to say.
The definition of an alpha. Just look back at what's been a pretty successful career and tenure so far with the Toronto Maple Leafs, how he handles the heat as opposed to other players, how they've handled the heat, current and former. I don't know why you're laughing. At the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I was talking about you, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit LeafsNation.com. Hope everybody's ready for this. Jay Rosehill is going to break down the first game of the preseason. I saw the tweets right away about people. Here we go again with this team. We'll dive into this. This segment brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. For a good time, find Greta 590 King Street West. Weekly specials, live sports, over 60-plus arcade games. Let the games begin. Go big. Go to Greta Bar YYZ. So again, full disclosure, didn't really have a chance to watch this game. I watched the highlights. We'll get to Max Pacioretty. I know it's one game, but pumped about him. But your general reaction to the opener, the preseason opener, Rosie.
Oh, I don't think you need to give too hard of a reaction. I mean, listen, preseason, it's just not an NHL game. It's not an NHL game. There's non-NHL players all over the ice. There's NHL players that they don't have their head or their full attention invested in the game. And you're not playing for anything. It doesn't mean anything. The goals you score, the points you get, there are no points awarded to the teams. There's no standings. It's not real NHL hockey. So even though it looks like it, the production's the same, the jerseys are the same. There's a reason you don't get an NHL game on your resume for playing in one of those. And for that reason, I don't put too much stock into it. But that being said, it was a pretty healthy Toronto Maple Leafs team against what looked to be mostly the Belleville Senators. And that happens in preseason all the time. And it's not indicative of how the team season goes. But they got off to kind of an ugly start. They couldn't get a shot on net. They were getting peppered. Their head wasn't in it. And, Craig Berube had his comments at the end of the game that indicated that won't really be accepted in the regular season this year.
So if you're looking for a follow on Twitter, X, I guess we call it, J_D_Rosehill, couple fine tweets from over the weekend. Blast from the past seeing Kuhlman out there. How do you look, by the way? I didn't get a chance to see Kuhlman on Ottawa. And the other one I really liked, exciting game aside from losing to Belleville.
Well, it was an exciting game. I mean, they came back and it was overtime, and it was kind of leafy. Get behind the ball early, wake up, show your talent, just enough to get back in the game, and then just kind of lose it in overtime. Right?
Yeah.
But again, it is preseason. Not going to put too much stock into it, but I think I'm hearing all the right things from Craig Berube so far, the things that I want to hear, I'm hearing. And that's like identity, what's acceptable, the accountability, and the effort and the grit and the trying to impress and the not being too cute. And you can tell that a lot of the pains that a lot of people have had following this team and this being their team and being invested in the Toronto Maple Leafs and the way they've kind of come up short in all years, but especially recently with this group, it sounds like they're addressing it, and we're going to see how they respond, which at least there's something different happening. They're not just doing it the same way to see what happens this year, which has kind of been, the hair losing effect of the last couple of years. And I like to see this, and I like Craig Berube being there, and he's saying the things that I would like him to say at this point in the season.
The big thing for me, there's no more music at practice. I don't know what these guys are going to do without the gangster rap at practice. So,
Like, I didn't even know they played like Sheldon Keefe, like music on in the background, and it's
yeah,
probably like rap and stuff. Oh man, that is very off the wall, but I would put that back to normal practice again too. I don't That's just weird, but yeah, of course the media would like that one, and it is interesting. You come in and say cut that shit out. Like Craig Berube is a no BS guy, and I think people are going to find that out in a hurry. He's not a jerk, he's not a prick, he's not arrogant, he's not any of those things, but he's just no BS kind of guy, and you're seeing it right there. He's like, "Hey, turn that crap off. We got work to do." And I
yeah,
don't
no,
see that at all.
exactly my feeling. Like I know we're just a week into camp, and don't worry for those of you in the chat. We're not going to thoroughly dissect the first preseason game, nor the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, or the sixth. You know how we feel about the preseason, the regular season for that matter in general. But I like the fact, to your point, there's an early tone setting by the new coaching staff, namely Craig Berube, where it's like, I don't know what happened in the past. That shit's not going to fly in my direction. I often joke about the permanent scowl on Chiefs' face. I love that. Like, even the fact that it's the first preseason game, he ices a good majority of his opening night roster. And he talks about being too slow and too cute. You see his mannerisms on the bench. Like, I love the fact that there's actually going to be accountability when it comes to this team.
I think that'll be the word that we use, probably overused for the next couple of months. While they get he's talking about new systems and new identities, and I think that's a breath of fresh air because sometimes I feel like we dissect this team pretty hard. We've watched several seasons. All the fans are as in depth as they can get. And I think the frustration is that you see the problems and they don't seem to be identified and they don't seem to be spoken about and they don't seem to be addressed, and that's frustrating for a Maple Leaf fan. And now it just seems like there's an aura of that coming to light, it being addressed by a proper individual who understands the same things that some of the fans feel is wrong with the team, and he's going to go and try to address them and correct them. And how well that works, I mean, that's why we're going to watch. But it's exciting that accountability factor is apparently being addressed in a big way by Craig Berube.
I get that. I just wonder how far he can go with it, right? Because let's not lose sight. I know Mike Babcock's a different story, but he was more of the cut from the same type of cloth. I think we can both agree in the way he viewed the game as Craig Berube. I just wonder when the going gets tough. I know it's preseason. We can joke about it now, but inevitably there's going to be moments throughout the season where somebody dogs it, misses an assignment, Berube gets pissed. And the response is what I'm eager to see, is how these guys respond to a bit of more scrutiny.
Oh, 100%. That's the $1 million question, man. How is this group going to respond to Craig Berube's philosophy? In a perfect world, you get 100% buy-in, and you have a group of guys that are willing to go through a wall for this team and for this coach and for the direction that he wants to take it. That's the ideal scenario. That's what everyone in coaching is trying to get. Unfortunately, there's 20 plus individuals on a roster. There's a lot of different mentalities. There's egos, there's habits, there's differences in approach, and it's not easy to get a whole bunch of guys pulling the exact same way on that rope. You can get friction. I'm not forecasting that. I'm not thinking that's going to happen. I'm not predicting that, but I think there will be some changes in accountability, some changes in identity, and automatically I go to the skill players and the high end players, and it's how much are they going to buy into that? Are they going to lead by example? Are they going to show the way? Or, there's a tendency for a really, really good all-star player to be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I do it my way. This is how I feel comfortable. This is how I've done what I've done to get me to this point, and I'm going to continue doing that. And I think where you can run into problems is where, the coach feels like there's no buy-in, the player feels like this is my buy-in, and then all of a sudden you got friction. I'm not forecasting that to happen, but there are going to be some changes, and it's going to be interesting to see how all those players collectively as a team respond to it.
Pretty decent opener, I would say, for Max Pacioretty, given all the conversation the last couple weeks. Gets 2-1. To me, obviously healthy. I know a lot about the player. That's as far as I'll go. But he had a good summer of training. I know both sides were talking quite a bit. The Leafs watched him skate quite a bit. Came here, went to see him skate. Like, this is a calculated decision to bring in Max Pacioretty. I think at this point we all know where it's headed. He's going to be a Maple Leaf this season. But again, one game, tempering expectation, but looked pretty damn good with John Tavares there.
Yeah, he did. Again, I'm a big body language, facial expression guy. He looks confident. He looks excited. Like he's happy to be there. And I feel like he probably feels a way he hasn't in a long time. And I think that's healthy. And I think that's strong. And he's happy to be back at it. And I think he's really thinking, I can prove something, that I've got some good hockey left. And he is just such a good hockey player. I mean, he's such a playmaker. He's capable of doing a lot out there, and that's not Austin Matthews levels by any means, but I think that if we get the best of Pacioretty, this is going to go down as a fantastic addition because he brings so many things to the table.
Well, imagine, I mean, health is a big concern with the player. We know his age. It's one game. I don't want to say that too much moving forward, but I think ultimately he could end up being a massive X factor for this team. Everything permitted. I mean, everything, works out in their favor, but I think just to have a guy, secondary option, a guy who can slot in on your second power play, low maintenance, just looking to get his footing back in the league, prove something. Like, I love hunger. I love motivation. Everything Pacioretty has said since he's come to Toronto in the last week is just the motivation to prove himself. I love that aspect.
Yeah, 100%. I think the potential is 100% there, right? And there's a reason they signed him. And again, it's low risk. It's not like they're risking a lot. It's not like they're gonna be put behind the 8 ball if he does get injured again. But I don't see reason for that. I can't imagine that he's not fully rehabbed, fully 100%. You can see it on his face. He looks excited to get rocking, and we don't know what's going to happen for sure, but the potential is through the roof for him to be a really, like you said, X factor on this team and be a really, really big part of it if they end up doing well and everything starts gelling. And yeah, one game, but you couldn't have asked for it to go too much better so far. And I think he's feeling good right now. It was a great start for him.
What do you think your guy Nikita Grebenkin wearing David Clarkson's number 71?
There's too much history and too many players that have played for this to start playing that game. I didn't even notice. I couldn't care less. David Clarkson. Whatever, dude. He looks good though, man. This kid's kind of a story out of nowhere because I certainly wasn't thinking about him beforehand. And it's not. So he gets in a scrap, fires up the crowd, gets some airtime, no doubt. But I like the way Chief said at the end. He kind of says with a smirk, he's trying to impress. And that's what you do at camp when you're a guy like that, like 5th round pick, couple years ago, not really on the radar. Go out there and try to make something happen. And the timing's really good for this kid, just based on the fact that the identity of the team is changing. They're looking for more of that. And, nothing really inspires like a young kid trying to make the NHL and doing whatever it takes. It's fun to watch, and it's something that's special about this time of season, where it's not about the glitz and glamour of the All-Stars. It's stories like this where kids are making some noise and maybe all of a sudden get into the conversation.
A bit of a throwback for sure. He's 21, coming from the KHL, 2022 fifth rounder. Dating back to the start of training camp, they said, if you play well enough, we'll find a spot for you on the team. At this point, if I had to handicap things, I think it's unlikely Grebenkin's going to make the team, but at the very least, make things difficult in terms of a decision. Injuries do happen, as we've seen early on. Trades could happen where they're trying to get cap compliant as well. At the very least, he's already put himself on the radar with the new coaching staff.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if he doesn't end up playing in the NHL at all, his name is in their minds now. He's made, a little bit of an impression showing, hey, I'm a gamer and I like to go out there and do the things that I think you're trying to do with this organization. 67 games last year with Magnitogorsk in the KHL, 41 points as a 21-year-old. They won the championship, whatever that is in the KHL. Got some experience, able to play at a high level, and comes into camp and looks like, hey, I know what you want and I'm willing to give it to you. It's a good sign. And I don't know. I mean, I like to know. I like to think about what's going on with Easton Cowan. And it's like, is like the biggest thing with him is he too young? Is he too green? Is he not ready to make that step? And all of a sudden you're starting to say, well, what are the other options? And I'm pretty high on Easton Cowan again. I can't say that he got, the greatest shake in the world, being on the fourth line, playing with Revo. It's not really his wheelhouse to really stand out, but it seems like he looked solid out there. Again, just trying to prove to Berube like that I am at the professional level with as Chief mentioned, his habits and the things you would have picked up in junior that you need to correct before you play at that pro level. Again, one game, there's still lots to be proven.
Yeah, I think consistency is going to be the big thing they're looking for with Cowan. By the reviews I was reading about and saw a bit, I think they were pleased with what he brought to the table. Cowan's back in tonight, by the way. He's going to be on the third line. I guess we don't number lines, but he's going to be with Logan Shaw and Grebenkin on a third line, a very watered-down Maple Leafs roster. David Kampf is their 1C for the game tonight against the Ottawa Senators. But for Cowan, there's opportunity there, right? Like a lot of the big boys not in the lineup. Let's see what you got. The Senators are probably going to ice a lot of their NHL roster tonight.
Yeah, it's another one of those kind of one-sided deals, and wouldn't be surprised if the Leafs beat them. Just for those bigger boys, it's a different mentality for different players, right? You put a good chunk of the core of the Ottawa Senators into this game. They're just trying to get their timing out there, getting their footing, seeing how their legs feel in game, couple hard shifts, keep them short, see how you feel, check out the chem with a couple new guys, see where you're at. It's not a big deal to them. They're not putting their entire focus into it like they would a regular season game. On the flip side of that coin, there's kids dying for their absolute NHL life and career and the dream that's always been ahead of them. They're trying to enter that world. And I mean, there's a lot going on for those guys as far as preparation and how serious you take it. So it's a tale of two worlds, and that's why we don't put too much stock into it. But it's going to be interesting, and I do like watching those guys battle for their life and battle for their dream at a chance to play in the NHL. It's something that is exciting about this time of year, is those stories that aren't the all-star guys making noise.
How did you approach training camp? Because Ryan Reeves drops the gloves. He's like the perennial tough guy in the league. Did you approach it differently, knowing that maybe you had a longer season, or were you just the type that always had to prove himself?
Yeah, I mean, I was always trying to prove myself in the NHL and stay in it. Camps felt different at different points in your career for sure. There's times where, I was at Tampa's camp and I just can see that there's not a chance that I'm really making this team. I'm not ready to make the team. So you're going there for experience, to try to get your name out there, to try to make some kind of an impression on everybody in the organization. Then there's where you're legit fighting for a spot. And, when I made the Maple Leafs at a training camp in 2009, I knew what they wanted. Berkey was in there, wanted to put his mark on the team. I knew they were going in a kind of a different physical. That's when truculence and pugnacity and all that stuff was quoted. And I just said, well, you want that? I am going to unload the tank. I am going to skate so hard. I'm going to go so nuts. I'm going to hit everything that moves. If anyone doesn't like it, I'll spring load my gloves, scrap anyone, and just show that I'm going through a wall for this team. I do not care who's in front of us. I won't back down. I'll give you what you want. And that's 100% all out effort with the right attitude. And, you know, it was what they were looking for. And I think Dangle quoted something at the time, but I didn't even know it, but I think I like fought 5 times in like 7 days or something crazy like that. Like played all the exhibition games pretty much. And, you know, they were against the Flyers and all these other organizations that have guys looking to do the same thing. So obviously fireworks are going to go off, and ended up scrapping quite a bit to make that team, but just showing what, you know, I was willing to do what they were looking for.
Patrick G. Mafia writes in, one of our faves here, that's the mentality we want, Rosie. You talk about fireworks, love storylines on this podcast. I know it's game 2 of the preseason, but Ridley Greig, to the best of my knowledge, will be in the Ottawa Senators lineup. By the way, the Leafs icing this roster. You got Camp, Alex Nylander, McMahon, Holmberg, Robertson, Cowan, Shaw, Grebenkin, Hervinen, Quillen, and Steves. And then you got Benoit Timmins, Mermis, Myers, Rafai, Mattinen, and Kokkonen. And I believe Anthony Stolarz will start. He'll be backing up. I'm sure he'll play as well at some point. So who's the magic guy on your list? There's got to be a response, right?
To that lineup?
Well, I think Ridley Greig. Do you think anything involving Ridley Greig tonight?
No, I don't. I don't.
Come on,
I think
take the bait, Rosie.
I think it's the last thing on these guys' mind, man. Something that happened. These guys are focused on making the team, especially that roster you just mentioned. It wasn't their team that was like. I just don't. It's not an issue. I don't even, that doesn't even come across my mind. These guys are trying to make that team. I look at that roster, and there's opportunity for guys to like step up into a different role where they probably aren't going to do that if Marner and Matthews and Nylander and Tavares and Pacioretty and these guys are in the lineup. You know, they can, you know, step up a notch and step up, you know, to the next spot on the staircase and be like, you know, take that role as far as, you know, being, you know, lots of talk on the bench, having confidence, chatting with the guys after every shift, saying things in between shifts, in between, you know, in the intermission, but step up in a leadership role is what I'm trying to say. You still got the same coaching staff behind you there, and they can get a semblance of, oh, this guy kind of likes to control things. This guy likes to be vocal, and take a step forward with the opportunity that you're given, because someone on that roster can stand out tonight and can do something special and be the leader that they probably wouldn't be if the big boys were there. And that shows things too. That shows character. That shows where your head's at, leadership, confidence, all those things. So any opportunity these guys can do to gain some ground in the depth chart, I think is huge. And it's what they're all going to be looking to do tonight.
Gary K. writes in, Grebenkin would become a god in Toronto if he destroys Greig tonight. I'll just say this. If one guy even looks in the direction of the guy tonight, I'll be happy. Considering what we saw last year, I'll be happy about it. Morgan Riley aside, of course.
Yeah, we'll see. If I think that's more of a regular season thing, but I mean, yeah, if this kid does want to keep his storyline going, go and bury that guy and then stand over top of him and ask him, and then everyone's like, man, this guy's doing the dirty work from last year. But we'll see, man. It'd be a funny story. I'd watch, I'd laugh, I'd talk about it.
Yeah, I want a reason to watch this game. I'm not really crazy on the preseason. I know somebody writing in the chat how they shouldn't televise preseason games. Those days are well behind us. I totally agree. It's like, I'm just hoping nobody gets hurt and are ready for October 9th in Montreal. But players I have my eye on tonight, Rosie. Alex Nylander is going to play on the top line there with Camp and Nyes. Intrigued to see how his camp goes. Nick Robertson goes without saying. I think there's obviously a bit of a fight, you know, in terms of where he's going to land on this roster. Are they going to trade him? Is he going to be in the mix? Obviously, he's an NHL player, but I think the fit's important for me when it comes to Robertson. Easton Cowan, I think it's quite clear that he's playing another game, the second in a row. They're giving him a legitimate look, and Grebenkin, how he responds after a strong opener.
Yeah, I would agree with those things. They're kind of the storylines and the guys that can do what I was saying and step it up and be noticed and show, you know, where they are at this point in time. They've improved, they've matured, whatever you're trying to show. Opportunity for them. I'd like to see Nyes too, like really step off the page and be like, I'm above, I'm above this level, and he is looking to be slotted into that position, playing with the big boys, getting some big time minutes this year. So seeing him really step up from a leadership standpoint as well on that roster, you'd think it's an opportunity for him to do that as well, although it's not as dire straits as it is for some of those other guys you mentioned.
It's just difficult early in the preseason to really have a feel one way or another on, what they're thinking, especially there's not really a track record on Craig Berube. Like, I'm doing my best not to read too much into line combinations and all that, and where Easton Cowan's in the lineup and Grebenkin, but I think that's more something I will do in like the second half of camp. But I think for those guys, specifically the younger players, just make a difference. Do something every night that gets the coaching staff going. And I think consistency and stability. And that's why I think it's a sneaky big game for a guy like Cowan. As mentioned, a lot of your roster is not playing. Go out there and prove yourself. Like, make a difference, be a difference maker, and you're going to get opportunity. I know he's starting on the third line, but I think Cowan's going to get elevated just like he did in the first game on Saturday or Sunday, excuse me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree that it's hard to get up for these. I want to wait till it's the last couple of games
Yeah.
and let's start to put a lot more pieces together. I mean, you look at this roster, it's tough to get excited for. It doesn't really show anything. It's not going to be indicative of a whole lot. But yeah, these guys need to do something to jump off the page, to wow the coaching staff and the managerial staff and say, you know, I'm someone you need to look at seriously. I'm separating myself from this team you just put together because I'm on a different level. I should be on the final team at the end of this camp and preseason. And everyone's trying to do that. It's tough to do. But if you look at the writing on the wall and what Coach Berube has been preaching, I would try to stick to the things that he's, try to read between the lines. What's this guy looking for? And just try to all out effort give him exactly that.
What do you make? I should ask it this way: how surprised? I know it's early in camp again that their PP1's intact. So Morgan Riley's running it. I know we saw a bit of a different configuration. Austin Matthews a bit more down low. Got Nylander at the point with Riley. Are you stunned that they're coming back with that, given all their issues the last couple years, specifically in the playoffs?
Well, I'm not stunned, but you look at the names on paper, it's like, yeah, that should work, right? What's the problem? So, you get some new hands and some new eyeballs on, constructing this thing. I think he's going to want to look at, that group that has some, history and has played together before. Obviously, what happened in the playoffs is shocking. So I think you start off by looking at it and seeing if, someone else from the outside coming in can pinpoint what's going on with it or what happened with it. At least start off that way. But there's different weapons this year and there's different things they can do, but I'm not shocked they're starting off with that. Look, the names on the paper are pretty talented hockey players. And I think that they're just trying to see, it's, you can, over a summer you can come back and they could start off the season absolutely on fire on the PP. Like, and how would you explain that? I certainly can't, and I bet you they can't. But whatever was going on last year, I think they're going to try to find if they can see what that was, if they can troubleshoot, if they can move some things around and just overall have a different vibe and see what happens. Again, it's the preseason. I'm not shocked they went with that group again.
For me, I would love to use the secondary unit a bit more, and you have to have options. Again, assuming Pacioretty's on this team, Matthew Knies is a year older. You have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's ran a power play before earlier on in his career. Maybe there are more options available to them, even a Max Domi. And I think maybe that's, a unique thing I'm going to be looking at is ice time, right? Especially we knew Sheldon Keefe loved playing his big boys. I have a feeling, not to say that, Mitch Marner's going to play 16 minutes a game or Austin Matthews is going to play 17 a game, but I think there's going to be a bit more balance in the way guys are deployed. And I think long-term that could benefit this team.
Yeah, potentially. There's reason to think that Berube would do that. I'm not going to say guys are going to be on a short leash, but I think that, until we, get this system down and get this identity down, he's probably going to roll them a little bit more and see if they can get everyone some touches and everyone on the same page. And like you said, on that power play, there's different tweaks you can go to. And I don't think they've had that option in the past little while. And, if things aren't going and there's frustration and, they can't get, entries into the zone, they can't set up, guys are kind of freewheeling out there, then yeah, by all means, pull this piece out, put this in, and see if it runs a little smoother. They'll have options this year at least, but I don't know, man. They have to figure that out. Special teams this day and age, especially in the playoffs, is just so is it as important as it's ever been in my mind. And you just got to figure that power play out. It cannot be what it was last season. It was, I don't even want to go back to that. It was so abysmal. I'm still shocked at what happened in the playoffs with their power play.
But there's a track record there. But you're so right. Like, they can be one of the top power plays in the regular season, and maybe it's just the approach and the feel going into the playoffs. They can get to the playoffs and they can be the shittiest power play in the league. Like, you just don't know with a power play.
It's I'm no power play expert, but
Yeah.
it just reeks of being mental. It reeks of being, oh man, now we're on the big stage. Now we're playing where it matters. Like we waited this whole regular season and kind of everyone's got this little hidden vibe of the regular season doesn't matter. And now here's, real bullets and it's the big series. And they kind of seem to let it get to them and they're not able to perform. I mean, it is what it is. In my mind, it's mental, and to have a different approach and get some different blood in there with a different guy at the helm, I think could kind of jog that. Hopefully, is the plan, and you won't see that anymore. But it's time for this group to perform under pressure when it matters.
Leaf Nation 67 writes in, how many games do you give Nylander at center? I know we talked about this last week, but for me, it's got to be at least the duration of the preseason, at least 10 games in the regular season too, if not more.
Yeah, I think I said 10 last week. I
Yeah.
think that's a good number. You get yourself into a routine, into like, your camp's well behind you, few weeks in at least, and all of a sudden, the team's kind of taking shape. You're falling into your routines, and the season's underway. And you can probably get a pretty good idea about it then. I mean, unless it's just going poorly, one shift after another, and Willie's going this, I don't, if Willie's not liking it, then you don't really need to keep beating it over the head. I don't really foresee that happening. And I think that barring any injuries or anything like it's happened in the past that forces their hand, I think they'll give them a good shot there.
Yeah, and again, I really can't read too much into the preseason. Like, for the majority of these guys, like 95% of the roster, like these guys are just going about their thing, making sure they don't get healthy, getting their reps in. But until it's game one, you really don't know that feel of the regular season. And I know, like, people in Montreal, I got cousins in Montreal. Lane Hudson, I guess, is the next Bobby Orr. Like, let's see when it's game one. And we do this every year. It's like you watch one game and it's like, here, the same old Maple Leafs team. I guess, it's a recency thing. You see it on TV, you're like, oh crap, here we go again. But for me, it's like, how, what does it look like in the regular season? I want to see like a lengthy amount of time where it's like a random game in November. What is Nylander looking like? Can he get some repetition going? What does it do to the lineup? Like, I like the aspect of like lengthening the lineup, if you will, to have those three guys up the middle and just have different lines going and not having a dip. That's been the big story with this team the last couple of years, Rosie. Outside of the top six, massive dip when you get to the bottom six. And I think they're looking for a bit more balance here.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity for it to be more balanced, but consistency is going to be a big thing. I think that's what Craig Berube is going to want. You don't want those teams that are on roller coasters, man, because it's too easy, when the going gets tough, to get put on that downward slide. And this team's been doing it every playoffs for years now. You're streaky. You can be so good, but you can be so bad. And you need that consistency across the board where you can access your good hockey all the time. It's your kind of default setting. You can fall back onto good habits and a good identity and a good foundation when the going gets tough. They need to find that, and I think consistency is going to be big, and that's going to play into where Nylander ends up playing as a position. If he's flashes of brilliance and then flashes of dog shit, and he's just sometimes responsible defensively, and then sometimes he's cheating the blue line and looking for the cookies, and it's just not going to fly with Berube. So I think they'll give him a real shot, but it's got to be consistent hockey that you can rely on in order for it to work, in my opinion.
Leaf Nation 67 again asked, you guys think Grebenkin makes the team? I said it earlier on. I don't think he does. I just think it's numbers oriented, but I think he's on the radar. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have even considered it or really known a lot about who he was, a week ago. And yeah, he had what are you getting, a scrap, and was, pretty feisty in one exhibition game. Not earth shattering news or anything, but the big question mark with Cowan, I think he's capable of making this team. I want him to start standing out. Tonight's an opportunity to do so. But if they're thinking they don't want to rush him, and you can ruin a guy, especially in this market, shoving him into a position he's not really ready for, all of a sudden, like, who fills that spot? What kind of identity are they looking for? How much does Craig Berube want a guy that's, that plays the way we kind of saw Grebenkin doing that? He's got a little bit more experience. He's a little bit older. He's willing to play that stretch of hockey, apparently. So we'll see. He's definitely on the radar now, but I don't think we need to jump to, penciling him in anywhere just yet.
It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The chat's been fantastic today, so I'm going to ride with you. I had somebody in the chat, pipe up if you can, calling a David Kampf goal, anytime goal tonight in Ottawa against the Senators. How do you feel about that, Rosie? The 1C, David Kampf.
I would like to see some value on that. But yeah, why not? Hell, the 1C, I would go with Nyzy. I think he could bury one, but I mean, for Kampf to step up, he's pretty. Why not? I'd like to see the value on it. I got my eyes on Nyes to actually get one, but he's probably gonna be the front runner on that roster. David Kampf potting one would be a nice little payday, I would think.
It would be kind of good. I will go with Easton Cowan to score a goal in this game. I think it's a big statement potential type game for Easton Cowan. Go out there, do your thing. I think they're going to use him in a variety of different roles. But again, a very watered down Maple Leaf roster, very similar to what we saw the Belleville team pretty much for the Sens on Sunday. It's like going to be flip-flop, where I'm assuming a lot of Ottawa's roster is going to play, where there's going to be a lot of youngsters in the Leafs roster. Some guys with NHL experience. You mentioned Matthew Nyes will be in the mix, even like an Alex Nylander. Looking forward to seeing what he does. Nick Robertson, make a difference, do something special out there. Consistency's a big thing with him.
I'm going to say, keep an eye on Robertson. He might have a little chip on his shoulder, and he's got a lot to prove. So I imagine he'll be buzzing out there, as he should be one of the front runners on that roster as well.
Looking forward to that one. We'll be back in the mix on Thursday. I know a lot of you have been asking, not only today, but in the past couple of weeks, when we coming back full bore Monday to Friday. That's going to start on October 7th. As I mentioned last week, I'm headed to Cancun actually for a week for a wedding. I know my buddy just books it at the most perfect time. I'm in the wedding party. So October 7th and I believe the 8th, our main man, Zach Phillips, Leafs Nation After Dark. I can't wait for October 9th to see what Zach has to say, not only about the opener, but the offseason in general. We're going to be in the mix with Zach. He's going to fill in next week as well. But full bore, we start Monday to Friday. Again, if you haven't watched this show before, we're with you every day talking Maple Leafs, and that's pretty damn cool in my opinion.
Yeah, when you're not busy being a pleasure pig, apparently. It's time to grow up, Nikki. You got responsibilities, man. This is like your third trip in 2 weeks. Unbelievable. I don't know how you do it, but yeah, we'll go to 5 days a week. 5 days a week when they start shooting real bullets. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long wait, man.
Zach Phillips writes in, now we go. Yes, you are correct on that front. Patrick G. Mafia, Coco Bongos, Nick, is the club. I don't know if I can do any more clubs. I've had a long summer. This is like the ending to a summer. Something I booked 2 years ago, going to Cancun with like 70 people. It should be good. But I'm also just jacked to come back and watch hockey. Like, I think the day I come back, the season starts. I know it starts over in Europe like October 4th, but I'm just like pumped to have hockey back, talk about the Maple Leafs, and I'm feeling really optimistic about this team. I won't lie.
You are. I like it. I haven't felt that vibe that strongly from you so far, but it's good to see you're on board and you're not pessimistic. And we have some light at the end of this tunnel, and hopefully it is a hefty playoff run, but we got lots to go through before that happens.
I always laugh when I do the rundown, because I remember your reaction when it said like 58 days away from the season opener, and we sit here pretty much 2 weeks away from starting for real here.
I know. Well, that's the summer for you. It goes by quick, baby, and you get shoved into spring, or you get shoved into fall. And here we are, a few more somewhat meaningless games ahead of us. And yeah, I'm kind of excited for the end of camp and to really be able to analyze what this team is going to look like opening night.
If the Leafs lose tonight, I think there's going to be pitchforks in this market. So we'll leave it at that. We'll be back on Thursday to preview what's to come, recap a bit of what we see here on Tuesday night. So again, if you're following the chat, appreciate your thoughts today. You guys are fantastic. At the Leafs Nation 401, hit the subscribe button. Hit that like button, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget as well to visit theleafsnation.com. For producer Vic, for Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. Talk on Thursday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.